BIDI 4. June 12, 2018. Testimonials, questions and answers. Well, BIDI is with you again. Laughs. I'm listening to you. Voices. So it is a testimony on Pentecost, Monday, May 21st, 2018, in the morning. Testimony. The fusion of Mary, Queen of Heaven, has merged with Mary, Queen of the Earth. Mary's feathers in which the child had huddled on May 16, 2018 were terrestrial, because they were brown tones. There, I saw them white, in white clouds. They lifted me up and I wanted to hug them. Impossible, because they were going up at the same time as me. Then, the density of Mary's white and the clouds surrounding her gradually and rapidly decreased to become a light fog, barely perceptible, in a black background. All forms had disappeared. I thank you for this testimony which, beyond the decoration using certain archetypes, in this case the feather and Mary, leads to what? In white paradise, that is, in Shanti-Nilaya, while seeing, as I believe it is said, the black background. That is, the consciousness has succeeded in perceiving itself. However, it does not specify whether she was in naked consciousness or in the body of eternity, but that does not change anything. From the moment, whatever the setting, when you arrive in this white, uniform fog or with the black background behind it, you touch in bare consciousness or in consciousness of eternity, the threshold of the infinite presence and the absolute. Of course, that's the experience. Afterwards, it would have been necessary to have information on the results or consequences. But nevertheless, if I accept the date coded as specific to each one, the point of arrival is really the ultimate presence, infinite presence, with the absolute just on the other side or all around. So it's really been lived. Obviously, when you experience this, beyond love, the transformations of all that is ephemeral, in you and around you, take, I would say, another turn. That is, everything becomes a sign, everything becomes obvious and life is lived with less and less effort, whatever the state of the body and whatever the residual state, we will say, of the person. So of course, this sister, I think, tells us to climb with Mary. She could have done it with a bird, she could have done it alone. Remember that archetypes are sets, but nevertheless, because of their interface, they allow action on truth, as well as on illusion. This is the junction point. That's what I was saying, being everything and nothing, but also being aware of everything in between. When I say between the two, do not imagine any distance, but rather a degree of expansion. Logically, after this experience, the state of love without object and without subject must appear, manifest itself and take up all the space. Of course, even after these kinds of events, everyone rhythm, as long as the collective event is not there, belongs to everyone. But from that moment on, there can be no turning back, that is, to the conditions that existed before that experience. Whatever it changes, it becomes perceptible. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions or questions? Voice. So I have a written question. Question. Is the notion of turning the other cheek still relevant? Is that a phrase from the Bible? Voice. Yes, from the New Testament. So it all depends on where you are. Understand well that the difficulty or facility is not to turn the other cheek, but to grasp, understand and live that by being true love, there is no reason why there should be the slightest slap that occurs. Today, this is impossible. So it's no longer relevant, but of course, it all depends on where you are. If you're in the person, you can always adopt this precept of turning the other cheek, so as not to react and enter into duality. But it's very difficult when you're a person. And when you're in true love, this kind of event simply cannot happen. That's impossible. None of this can happen. What was illustrated by this sentence in another time, is no longer really relevant. If you're in the person, you react or force yourself not to react, but this will not make you move in the notion of giving or sacrificing yourself. On the other hand, if you experience the resurrection, finalized or not, it doesn't matter. At that moment, I repeat, there's no reason for you to take a slap, physical or otherwise. In this case, love does not react and you will always have the explanation of why and how, not by understanding, but directly by the intelligence of the light. And also, I can add that, of course, there are so many different circumstances and situations to face these kinds of events corresponding to the question, that I can only give this very general answer. You can continue. Voice. So we have oral testimony. Testimony. Yesterday, during the meeting with Eba, my eyes were closed and at one point I saw flames of light. I understood that it corresponded to each one and, suddenly, everything dissolved into a single white. And from there, it went into the heart, which started to burn. And all that fire spread all over the body. Thank you very much. What you described there, which happened during the meeting with Eba, is exactly the same as this dream, but that you didn't have to dream it or leave, it happened through this body. That is to say, love, naked consciousness, has revealed itself to you at the same time. Here, what is important, of course, what happened is the reality, but what is important is also the result on your ephemeral since yesterday. And now you're not talking about it. That is, how do you feel today, compared to yesterday, before? Same sister. But, compared to yesterday, I had already lived, on 2 occasions each morning, this consciousness of love, around 2:3 o'clock in the morning. Where I actually saw that I had lived through all the time, gifts such as trips, the absolute, encounters with beings. And that everything had ended about 3 weeks ago, let's say. A little after Eba had come to get me out of these states of disappearance, of ecstasy, where I was very well, and what made me a little angry for a while. But I saw what was to be seen, what persisted. And shortly before coming here, the revelation of a morning, the same, so, are you ready to close this book? And so, these last 2 mornings, after having already observed all this, something happened to me, like an acceptance, a relaxation. I experienced a flash every morning, a single flash above my forehead, and then I felt a fire of the heart, a burning, and as if everything had faded, everything was going out and only this love remained. And since then, I have been in this love. So, indeed, there are little experiences, an experience, rather, of this kind, where I perceive all these lights that dissolve in me. And the only thing I can also add in relation to yesterday, in relation to the testimonies of 2 other sisters or 3 other sisters, what was experienced in this body, when I, let us say, naturally absorbed these beings, I felt this fire at the level of the heart go down to the level of the stomach and blow something, literally, at the level of the stomach. I currently feel, I would say, more and more free in expression, as if I accepted, somewhere, or as if there were facilitation to express, to let love be expressed in me. Thank you for your very generous testimony. Laughs. And which really corresponds to the resurrection. It is clear and precise. So, you see, this one didn't go through archetypes. It went through reality, without crossing archetypes. The flames, the presence, the white. There are no discernible forms. But the result is the same. So, as it has been, in your multiple experiences, compared to that of yesterday of the other sister, it simply shows you, and considering the repetition of these states, the immutability of love. Obviously, there too, it is irreversible, and love can only take up all the space, all your person and, in the end, all your body. You can well imagine that all your functions within the matrix that are ending are at that moment profoundly different, even within the illusion. Precisely because heaven is united to earth, in common resonance, without interference, without insulating layers. And the same for everyone, or most of them. For those who live it. But you will all live it, without exception. It all depends, of course, on the event, but at the latest, at the final moment. but this ensures you, as in the previous case, no matter how intense the starting point, it always expands in the same place and retracts in the same place. From the roof to nothing. And it is this circulation that is not one, at all, at nothing, even if not much is seen yet, that gives you this peace, this joy, this love. But you also have brothers and sisters who immediately pass from the person to the naked love. That is to say, there is no image there is no form, there is no white paradise, there is no black, there is the person and, all of a sudden, love. Without reference to any vibration, energy or materiality. The result is the same. So, the result is not bare consciousness, but above all, and more, the experience of love. This total change where, indeed, you can no longer be separated, divided. Even if, of course, you can use, if it is granted, your ephemeral, to carry out what is to be carried out. But also remember, what I told you 2 months ago, it is that as time goes by here on this earth, the progression and intensity of eternity will lead you, whether you like it or not, to a form of disengagement that you do not decide, but that occurs. Which for the moment still leaves you, I would say, with a certain relativity of personal choice, but that every day that passes, you will find that your personal will can no longer do anything. At another level, for example, during meetings of this burning, tuning or other, collective or individual, you'll therefore notice in a lying and motionless position the two things. The first, perhaps a greater ease or a new difficulty to disappear, but also, at the other end, to notice that even when returning to the physical body, in ordinary consciousness, you can open your eyes, but that in some cases, you cannot move. It also does so even if you want to expand without objective, motionless or even in a seated seat, long enough, and you will find that the body does not respond. Indeed, whatever the event, you realize that you are entering something with more or less intensity and that it is real. You lose control of the ephemeral, of your bag, and you take control of eternity. That's really what I was illustrating with this notion of balance. You conclude, even if it is not collective, that this mechanism of difficulty in moving the ordinary consciousness and the body, is more and more present, even individually. This undoubtedly indicates that the collective moment of the event is very close. Moreover, for those who live it, you notice a kind of progression in intensity and duration of this process, which corresponds in truth to the dissolving action of the body of eternity on the physical body, which takes over all the functions. This is how, in this period, for those who live it, you acclimatize to your body of eternity, to your naked consciousness. This acclimatization will continue, and will appear in other brothers and sisters in an increasingly important way, until the time of the event. Here too, it is a gift of grace that allows for an extremely rapid deployment of the truth, so that everyone can take what is for them. You can continue. Voice. For the moment, there is no, yes, it is. We have a question or a testimony. Testimony. At the end of the previous sequence, it was about the person, who was a screen and who prevented light and love from passing through. At that moment, at the level of the heart, which was a square, I saw the arms and legs bending at the back of the body, like an origami. And in fact, there was a veil blocking it. At that moment, the right fist hit the veil and blew it up, and a column of light came down from the sky, but did not reach earth. And there, at the beginning of the second session, I saw myself sitting, with the column of light in front of my body. I then stood up, the body and the column of light fused, and the body fell to the ground like a coat. And all that was left was the column of light. Thank you very much. Here too, an experience that transcends the decor, since we are in a form beyond any form that is the cylinder of light. So, you lived, beyond the installation in the heart, you lived a part of the mechanism called ascensional, in a precise way. Here too, it is a form of repetition, before the collective moment, which of course has the same potential in terms of naked love or naked consciousness. This kind of speech, of testimonies, will become more and more extensive, more and more present in you and in an ever-increasing number of brothers and sisters. and from now on, even totally unexpectedly and spontaneously, regardless of any invention, intervention, brothers or sisters of any kind. That is, from these days on, when a process is impelled in any way, it can only reproduce and amplify itself, regardless of any new interaction with anyone. All this is made possible, of course, by the intelligence of the light, by your sense of sacrifice and erasure, but also by the presence of the Christ matrix and your body of eternity. The most important thing, and I take this opportunity to say it again at that moment, whatever the images or not, whatever the vibrations or not, whatever the visions of the ether or the visions of the heart, or the inner visions, especially, make yourself even more available, so as not to put before the need for understanding, explanation. And moreover, for the most part, that's what's happening. You don't want to understand, you don't try to understand, because what's happening is the explanation. Thank you for your testimony. You have here 3 or 4 testimonies which, with different experiences, led more or less strongly to the same thing. Silence. Testimony. I just wanted to say that this morning I dreamed, in the early morning, that my car was impounded, just 4 minutes before could get it. That's all. That's all. It means you changed not the car, but the vehicle, the bag. That the old body will be replaced by a new body you are living, the body of eternity. Within the dream of this world, the consciousness and the person inform you of this. This also means that the switch from one body to another is recorded. Perhaps not on the dense plane, but at least on the planes of heaven. All you have to do is make the connection. But it is not you who makes it, it is done from the moment you disappear to yourself, which you describe perfectly. Question. I just wanted to ask for a little clarification on the fact that we're supposed to eat a lot less, and that since we've been here, it seems we're eating 3 times more. Then you know very well that there are 2 things. First of all, the group training effect. It is enough that there is one who devours for the others, unconsciously, to start devouring. Because there are reflexes for fear of lack, even if you are unaware of them. But this is the group's training. Eating together, of course, makes you hungry. But there is also the fact that during your presence, of course, you're a group, so there is obviously a form of accentuation of the mechanisms, and once you lead the alignment of an appointment with Eba or with anyone, there is also, in the form of a reflex, the need to come down and have your feet on the ground. It's conditioned reflexes. And the more you leave, the more hungry you will be as a group. While this does not correspond to any need. But the group effect is predominant. Because you know very well that in all areas, as soon as there is a group, there is always in that group, the fear of missing, whether you like it or not. Whether it is the entrance to the cinema, whether it is to go shopping, any human group obeys, in an easier way, the energy at the group. Even if you usually stand in a different energy. But the most important thing is really this notion of group. The second notion, namely the need to anchor or take root, is also an unconscious reflex. It is also a way to regain a foothold in the ephemeral, simply by adding metta. But if you were experiencing these states for even an hour or 2 a day, you would easily see, alone or in small groups, that really and concretely, there is no hunger. Or at any rate, at times that cannot be rigid, such as meal times, but that will trigger hunger at any time. That, you all live it, for a reason that is very simple. It is that the alchemy that takes place between the igneous fire, the vibrational fire, the vital fire, uses a certain number of structures that are conjoined to the ephemeral body and the body of eternity. And above all, what I think you call the attraction and vision doors, which of course are linked to digestion, blood sugar and all the functions that do not control the appetite, but that open the appetite. Who do not necessarily command you to say you must go eat, but who unconsciously make you fill up. It's filling, it's not even food anymore, when you're in this second case. So you imagine, the group, the more the second notion, indeed, you may gain a lot of weight during this week. Laughs. All the more so, I remind you that when you are in the heart, vibratorily, in naked consciousness or in consciousness of eternity, here you are really and concretely nourished by the light. But here too, in general, it's always the same thing. It's a problem of habits, which are, in addition to habits that are not individual, but collective. The notion of eating, to feed, is not only a physiological need, but eating in a group, more often than not, creates an emulation to be filled, independently of everything else. And you also have another notion that comes into play. In general, when you are served something, your wife or in a restaurant, you eat what is on the plate, you have no choice. But if you have a choice, well, you're going to take all the choices. Human nature is made that way. Even liberated by love. This shows you that this body and this bag of meat still let you, despite everything, by the nose. You still have difficulties, unlike yogas, more people, who are used to this. It is very simple, who is in charge, is it the bag or is it love? Even when love is there, the bag, it remembers you. Either you listen to it or you listen to love. And if you have excessive or bulimic food behavior, it means that at mealtime, you have put love behind you. Small laughs. It's as simple as that. Try, for example, before meal, it is easier alone or in small groups, to try to align yourself or stay still, and you will see that when you return, you will observe two behaviors. Either the need to fill up and eat something right away, saying it will get better when you eat, or a total loss of appetite on the way back. Both are possible. And the third case is indifference, where, in concrete terms, you observe that the person, with his rules, can no longer lead you by the nose. It is not the body that orders, with its needs, it is love that takes up all the space. Why do you think most of the great mystics, wherever you look, only ate one meal a day? You even have mystics in your house who ate a host, you say, a week. You have no idea that's not what feeds you. So, you're really nourished by love. But it depends, if you listen to love or reflexes, or the group. It's always the same. Because even when you experience the resurrection, when it is finalized, you are forced to realize that there are still elements, snippets of elements of the personality, that change at times. Until it was seen. Not because there is something to solve, but because there is no total freedom when you let the desires of anything take over. That doesn't mean you have to oppose desires, but you have to see it. Because the simple fact of seeing, as soon as the resurrection is set in motion, allows a resolution, even faster, and faster, than what we were saying before, to let go or to let oneself go through. That was for transparency. But what happens in these meal times when you're alone or in a group, only shows you, whatever your condition, awake, asleep, vibrating, living the blaze or not, the behavior that will be adopted in terms of food. Either is linked and in resonance with love. In these cases, you can no longer be hungry as before, since the ration of light becomes more nourishing than the ration of food, it is unavoidable. Lightening, not slimming, but lightening the form, allows, without going too far, to create physiological modifications in your alchemical mechanisms between the ephemeral body and the body of eternity, between personal consciousness, spirit consciousness and a consciousness. It is the same for all habits, for all repetitive things. Now we were talking about food, it will be the same for sleep. The light nourishes you, and it changes the rhythms and alternating waking and sleeping patterns. All bodily needs, all behavioral habits, once love is totally established, can only change very deeply. Everything changes, not only the consciousness, not only the point of view, but the whole functioning of this body is reorganized. Not by any will, but by the intelligence of the light. And, above all, whatever these stories of weight or sleep, the most important thing is that love makes you beautiful. Laughs. And it shows. You can feel it. You can see that. There is no true love without a bright look, there is no true love without laughter, there is no true love without lightness, there is no true love without total unity with oneself and with all others. Otherwise, it is conditioned, it is not true love. The changes of the encounter with love and the experience of love have nothing to do, for example, with the liberation in 2012 of the wave of life, for those who have lived it. Of course, at that time, there were changes, both in food, sleep and other physiological changes, but they never reached the intensity of today and the power of today. Silence. Testimony. Thanks to listening to your many interventions, listened to very often, I have felt over the years that my physical body has gradually emptied itself, as well as the mind. And so well emptied that when I arrived here, I was able to receive my double. So now everything is going through me. On the other hand, on my chest, throat and face up to the top, I have the impression that there is always fire coming out or water coming out, or the wind. That makes perfect sense. You perceive the arrangement of the igneous fire from now on and more, through the elementary, primary activity, that is, the element in its etherized nature, the element whose ether was rarefied. So you can very well feel fire, air, water, or a density, the earth. The arrangement of the adamantine particles of your body, of being or eternity can manifest itself, as you already know, through fires. But also by air. It may very well happen that you start to feel a vortex or a very localized draft, facing an area of the body, which corresponds to an alchemical work of resolution. Sometimes you can feel a density, like a heaviness, something heavier, and in other cases, like a kind of runoff. It is quite concrete, it is the elements, which are arranged differently, because of the presence of the ether, and this leads to the appearance of perceptions as you describe them. Fire, you know it can take at the head, at the feet or anywhere, or at the heart. Then there is the wind, something moving, very locally, you really feel the air. It means that there is alchemical work being done on the body of flesh opposite the area where you feel the air. Density, now, and that, it was explained in the care for yourself or when you treat someone, that you welcome them into you, you will feel areas of your body that do not vibrate like the rest, they are heavier. It is, in this case, that this heaviness must be reabsorbed into the heart. Because heaviness, the earth element, is what freezes. And so, it crystallizes the ether and precipitates into the matter. That is, moreover, and it had not been said, I believe, in previous interviews, in the process of expansion, contraction, healing, with the waves of the heart and bringing back what you feel directly into your heart, by thinking, not by energy, you heal. Since, from now on, the central vibrational flow, the one that goes not only from the sacrum to the top of the head, but from between the 2 feet, becomes more and more active. I pass the phenomena of heat, of burning, because these are directly linked to the fire of love. But remember that when there is wind, a draft, when there is pressure, when there is density, which vibrates less, or when there is a feeling of runoff, no tingling, the tingling is the fire of the adamantine particles, but of something that flows like water, there too, it means that a work of reharmonization is done through the elements of our body of eternity on the flesh body. Silence. Any other questions or testimonies? Testimony. Last month, on the last day of the meeting, I hosted an individual tournament offered by your sidekick, and at one point I made a naked conscious fusion with BIDI. And I have expressed the intention to reconnect to my first emanation of consciousness. And I ended up being a huge tube of white light. And I stayed in that state until the end. It is the return to the vibrator information, the costume, if you will, of Metatron, which is present, of course, in each of you. In the heart first, and when it is revealed, it is indeed the tube of white light, which travels from the median line, between the feet, to above the head. Of course, in naked consciousness, you can go beyond any anthropomorphism, and that's what happened, since you were, I think, this white column, or you became this one. Same sister. I became this one. So you became Metatron. It's as simple as that. Same sister. I had asked to reconnect my first emanation of consciousness. I'm not Metatron. Laughs. But the first emanation of each of you, before multiplication, is what? Did you all go out at the same time like that, with a creative idea? Laughs. No. No, you're going through the tracks. 0, 1, 2, 3. It is the descent into the manifestation of consciousness. So, as you are now going the other way, some of you are coming directly to the first archetype, that is, the first separation. Since you have all, without exception, been through this. All of them. So, you find, as you said yourself, your first emanation, but your first emanation can only be Metatron. What is called the flame, the divine spark, only takes on its specificity when there is a framework. That is, only once the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, which is the frame, the 5, the movement, is created, even before seeing. Anyway, the divine spark is only flames, there are no characteristics. But these flames, they do not appear from the source like that, it is a schematic vision that we had proposed to you. But the first emanation, since you are all the same, that we are one, that you will obviously go through the source, through Metatron. And the last stage, behind all this, what's going on? Ever. So, when we tell you that there is only one consciousness that is fragmented to infinity, it is the strict truth. And besides, you describe, in this space of return to the principle, to the essence, of the first emanation, you have not seen yourself in a given form, nor a lineage, nor a solar system. And if you go up just above Metatron, or just below, you have the 4 Hayat HaKadosh. So some of you see the wheels in the wheels and the Hayat HaKadosh, the seraphim, above their beds. That's normal. Since it all started from scratch, then 1, then 2. Do not imagine appearing like that, by the operation of who knows what, directly constituted in a given shape or dimension. You know well that you have lines and a stellar origin within what existed in the dream. The stellar origin, except for a few, is not the triangles, it is the limit of anthropomorphism. Or, more dense, in the 11th, or Sirius, or others. Specificity is not something that can be taken out of the source, since there is nothing created. It is taken after having crossed, not the archetypes of this world, but I would say, the true archetypes, that is, the original form of Metatron, the Absolute, which has no form, the Source, the Eba, the primordial Mother. And the specificity will appear when the framework of manifestation, the 4, and the movements, the 5, are regulated. And there you emanate as flames, in your stellar origin, in your dimension of manifestation. But when you asked for the first emanation, indeed, you found yourself at the first common emanation of each one, after the source, Metatron. Same sister, thank you. So do you understand why you have been told for years that everything is inside you, that all the worlds are inside you? Of course, of course. How could you expect it to be otherwise? And I think Eba explained it to you at length, in broad terms and across the board. But the explanation is useless. Now that you've been through this, what are you doing with it? You say I was Metatron. Same sister, no. No, certainly not. Laughs. But you can say it. Laughs. You are. After that, of course, there will be some colorings coming, but it depends. Because you can go before the first emanation, and now what are you gonna run into? Live it and you can tell me about it. You are neither the costume, nor this body, nor your emanations, nor your manifestations, in any dimension whatsoever. So it's seductive to say that we all have the spark of lifiness. We all have the hard kekra, we all have unity, we all have merriness. But it's the truth, real. You're identified with the story, the furthest from home. The total fragmentation and separation. And when you find freedom, it's been explained to you, except that now, instead of finding your lines, your origins, you go much further. Because beyond everything we told you, whether it was me or the others, stars, archangels, Don't forget that there is a very small change. When I say very small, it is indeed a grain of sand, but the effect has an impact on the whole system. Not just here. And you will see that if you go before the first emanation, you will live what you are. Whenever tells you that you're billions of billions of billions of Agabes, it is the strict truth. Do not be trapped by a given shape, by a stellar origin, by a lineage. These are things you've already been through. Not all of them, but remember the times when you saw your lines. Today, the opening is total. So do not stop on the way, because in any case, the event and the final planetary grid will lead you before the first emanation, which is translated today, even if you have not experienced it, by this unspeakable love. And besides, all those who live it have been telling you for centuries that everything has become transparent, that everything has become alive, that the other is as interesting as you are, if not more so. And besides, in your life, today, simply look into your life, who you favor, you or the other, or all the others. Look at this. Do you put yourself before the other or do you put the other before you? Love and gift, it is there. Because if the other person does not come before you, you have not understood that he is you, you do not live it. But of course, as soon as you touch Metatron, or Abba, all that no longer exists, you can see it clearly. And you can no longer, it's visceral, in the sense that it's impossible, you can't privilege yourself more than the other. At all levels. Without it, you experience nothing of love. And now, the words, the experiences, will no longer be so wrapped up, but will be more and more direct. To see you as you really are, not at the level of the person or behaviors, but in the truth of love. And he who lives true love, can never stand in front of it. He always places the other person in front of him, because he knows that it is him and that it is the only way to love. Until you have given everything, you have given nothing. Now, it's not a sermon, it's not morality, check it out for yourself. When you are told that you are one in the other, that the whole world is in you and that the universes are in you, it is not a view of the spirit or a concept, or something that looks pretty. It is the raw and naked reality of truth. I am telling you this so that you can situate yourself in the love you are living. True love completely transforms the relationship with the other, necessarily, since there is no other. The other one is you, as much as you are. And you're both delusions. And the only way to fix it is to give yourself up. Now you do what you want. But you cannot and will not be able to maintain this true love, if by seeing, I would say, the failings of what remains of no one, you nourish them. And you feed them as soon as you pass before the other. Because the other one is nothing but you. It is an image multiplied to infinity. Look at all the brothers and sisters who even before this period were living love. There is no other love, whatever the setting, whatever the size, the shape, the dream. There's only one. Silence. And that's a rule. In this world, as long as you have not touched what you are, that is, in pure love, obviously there are rules, obviously that the functioning of the person is not the functioning of love. Therefore, you cannot be a person who lives love, you're the love that is lived through a person. It's not the same thing. Being the love that is lived through a person, you really and concretely experience the same love. If there is the slightest difference between the devil and your darling, you are not in love. That's not possible. Ask around, look at the testimonies. However, you will not be able to achieve freedom if you do not apply this. And besides, those who live love have only one desire, it is to give, all the time. There is only one thing that is important, and that is not to think of oneself and to think, every minute, of the whole creation. There is no other alternative. So, as long as you are locked up, even in the love you have experienced, that's why I'd asked you to testify, so that you wouldn't be huddled up in your little experiences. Love is not meant to be kept hidden. Don't confuse that with ego. And of course, the one who doesn't see it, he thinks it's ego. He's just seeing his beam. Love can only manifest itself. It cannot be restrained in any way. Without it, it is not love. Accept this, because there is no other truth. You see it well in your days. How much time do you spend with yourself? How much time do you spend taking care of others, which do not exist, but which must also be awakened? When love is there, you cannot do otherwise. All brothers and sisters, even in earlier times, when they experience this awakening to love, have only one desire. It's not about locking yourself in and living their little inner show. It is to love and serve, even within the illusion. Don't confuse everything. Love is open, it is not locking. It is not made to be kept, it is made to be given. And if you don't give yourself every minute of your life, what happens? You will be released, that's for sure, you're free. But there will be distance. The distance between you and yourself. To recognize oneself in the other is not a practice, it is a truth above all else. And if you don't see that, you don't perceive it, but there's no need to ask yourself that question. It shows the way you live. I would say that if more of your time has passed, in this world, in ephemeral activities, and you do not feel this state of love that makes you love each other, you will put distance. And moreover, when you are really in love, in this state, you cannot do otherwise. You even unintentionally think about the other person before you do. Without it, it is not love. You took refuge in an ivory tower saying I live happiness, you turn inwards, yes. But there is nothing that emanates, there is nothing that shines. That is why the best witness of love is joy and laughter. There are no others. To pretend to live love and take a sad look is impossible. Without it, you're lying to yourself. Love is not a dream, love is not an ideal. I put a lot of intensity into what I say, because you are more and more countless to touch love, to live it, and, of course, it is a treasure, that we want especially that it does not go away. But you will unfortunately understand that if you want to keep it as a treasure, it will shrink. And the more you give this love, the more it passes through you and the more you have it. The less you give, the less you will experience it. And it's not a moral conduct or a spiritual precept of a religion, it's like that because it can't be otherwise. And if you're otherwise, by living this burning of love, you have something to solve. Not much, since you are living it, but adjust. It has been explained to you, either you live your life or you live life. It can't be both. At first, yes. But very quickly, no. And now, what are you going to see? If you feed your character, or stories from this world, well you will lose this love. It will seem to escape you. You can only make it grow and appear in its entirety by loving, beyond the person. Why did IDADE and I tell you that you had to eat, absorb every being and every brother, every sister, every object, every animal you see? Because there is no other way to make love grow. But if you think of yourself, love will not grow. And you see it every day, in every circumstance. The more you give, the more you are full of love. The more you control, the more love controls you instead of expanding you. This is a rule that is not subject to any exception. I said it, you can't understand it, you have to live it first. And if you start weighing can I not, him, not him, but it's not love. Love is spontaneous. It makes you happy with every breath. It takes you away and feeds you with every breath. Maybe I finished my preaching, didn't I? Laughs. Voice. We're done, yes. I'm sorry, but this preaching was important, especially in relation to what's coming up there. You need to readjust as soon as possible. Based on what I see here and everywhere, by the way, love is not for the person. Love is not made for the self. You are love. Love cannot be restricted. The sun feeds every child. Whether he's a bandit, an assassin or a saint. It makes no difference. And I believe that the source had said it during his passage in a body of synthesis. There is no saint who has not been a sinner, there is no saint without a past, there is no sinner without a future, in the circumstances of this world's time. But today, it is much more than that. I think you told me the preaching time was over. Voice. Yes, yes, yes. Laughs. Then I'll leave you to it. Voice. I didn't dare interrupt you. Laughs. I let you not meditate on it. It is useless, nor even understand it, but apply it, in order to see its truthfulness. It's not complicated. So BIDI will stop his sermon. Laughs. BIDI loves you. All. So do we, BIDI. So do we. Thank you very much. All. So do we, so do we. And BIDI will participate, with the sidekick, tonight, to come and tickle your heart. All. Error. Error. Applause. You managed to get me out of my rest. Laughs. One can't resist. Participant. Ah, that's good. So I'll see you later. All. I'll see you later. And always has. All. To always. Thank you, BIDI. Through Jean-Luc Ayoun. Les Transformations. French transcript. Agape team. Spanish translation. DeepL.com, revised by LMF.